So, very excited to be joined by the amazing Simona de Silvestro for episode 50 of the Girls on the Grid podcast. Simona, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Switzerland. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here, and we have a lot to chat about. But the way we like to start these podcasts is go from the very beginning with our guests. So, Simona, tell us a bit about your initial introduction to the world of motorsport and how it all started for you.
Yeah, so for me, it started through my dad, actually. So he has a car dealership here in Switzerland, and he was always around cars. He liked Formula One on TV. He liked racing and stuff like that. So when I was little, I always used to watch F1 on TV with him. And yeah, I think he used to say I was only quiet as a baby when Formula One was on TV. So I think I had, like, let's say, the racing bug quite early. But then yeah, because I grew up around cars, I really kind of, something that was really natural to me, and it's something that was always interesting to me. And when he did a go-kart demonstration when I was 4, I think, at the dealership, because they had a exposition and stuff like that, I got to drive around on his knees, and I really wanted to drive by myself. So I kind of was, I think, a little bit the terror child, and cried like the whole day, and annoyed him a lot to really maybe drive by myself. And I think, to quiet me down, he said, okay, if you're a little bit taller, maybe I get you a go-kart. So that's kind of, I would say, how it started. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And tell us about, those early karting years with we're very Aussie. I'll preface that at the start of the podcast. We're both very Aussie. But what was it like growing up karting in Switzerland? At what point did you start to travel, and when did it start to get a little bit more than just something you did with your dad?
Yeah, well, in Switzerland, because racing is actually banned, you don't really have that many tracks or anything like that. So we would go a lot to France. So I grew up close to Geneva, which is the French side of Switzerland. And we would just go across the border, which was, an hour and a half, and you were, a different country. And in France, there was this track. And we used to go there, on Wednesday afternoon here in Switzerland. You always have Wednesday afternoon, it's kind of school free. So we would go there, or on the weekends. And so, yeah, traveling was started kind of a little bit early. And then really, when it got more serious, when I was maybe, let's say, 10, 11 years old, you started doing, like, Euro championships and things like that. So you would go to Italy a lot, because there, racing is, especially in go-karts, is really where it's happening. So I spent a lot of time in Italy. And that's where, it became more serious, in the sense, because it was something I was doing. Sometimes I had to miss school for it and stuff like that. So I would say, when I was 10, 11, that's where it got a bit more serious. I was also playing tennis at the same time, and my parents kind of told me, okay, you need to choose. And I chose racing. It was kind of a no-brainer to choose racing, but I had to make the choice. But around 11, yeah.
So, did I hear that the racing ban in Switzerland has actually been lifted?
It has, for electric cars. So yeah, it's been banned to race cars since 1955, because I think there was a big crash in Le Mans, and in Switzerland they banned racing. So for Formula E, actually, we had there was 2 races in Switzerland, so they lifted that for electric cars. Yes.
Was that a barrier for you to it's so different, like Australia to go to a different country, it's a long way. But in Europe, it's kind of like you just jump on a train or just drive across a border, and it's completely fine. So for me to, like, comprehend that you just went to another country to race your go-kart, like, on a Wednesday afternoon, kind of blows my mind a little. But was that a barrier, being from Switzerland to then want to do something that's banned in where you're from?
Not really, because for sure, okay, it would have been nice, to have a track really close. But it's like, if you would go, I don't know, let's say, if you go from Sydney to Bathurst, it's like, it's not that far, in the sense, you're a different country, but it's pretty close still. And I don't think it's been a barrier, but for sure, I think motorsport, in Switzerland, we're lucky to have Sauber Formula One, which is kind of our, motorsport kind of top, because they are in F1, and actually there's we are quite a few drivers coming out of Switzerland, so I don't think it was a big hindrance in having that, but for sure, it would have been nice to have something maybe a little bit closer, I think as well, if I think, for example, my grandparents or stuff like that, I think as a kid, it would have been cool if they would come more often to races, but they didn't, because it was a little bit further away than if it was just, like half an hour away or something like that. Yeah, well, actually, going into a car was the weirdest thing ever, because coming from a go-kart, you feel at home. You have all your sensations and stuff like that, and all of a sudden you're driving this big thing, and it feels like it has no grip. It slides around. It's really strange, and it took a few days to kind of get used to it. And we would go to Italy. I was actually doing the Italian championship that first year, and you adapt to it. It's a whole new world. You need to learn different things, how to brake. It's so different than go-karting. The racing is similar, but how you drive a car is different than driving a go-kart. So that's I think like what every kid has to go through. And it's a cool experience, and for sure, it was just a normal step, for me to move forward in my career, to go into cars.
Were there many other girls doing what you were doing in that time?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because in Switzerland we were like 5 girls, and we were actually all really competitive. So I think from the nation's point of view, we were like the most of it. Even though weren't many that were go-karting or racing, but like from the girls ratio to the guys, like we were like quite a lot actually. So it's quite fun to see, and I think all of us were pretty fast as well. So it was pretty special, I would say, like now looking back, for sure.
And following on from that, Formula Renault, you then went to Formula BMW in the States. Now that's big change. Talk to us about that period of your life.
Yeah, it was. I did Formula Renault, and you know how racing is. You need sponsorships, you need budgets, and staying in Europe was too expensive really for us. Like my parents invested quite a lot in my career, but it got to the point where we couldn't manage it really ourselves, and yeah, we didn't really have the money. And then luckily, in that winter, we kind of, a friend of my dad's, he's Italian, he knew a team that was an Italian team that was racing in America, and we got in contact with them, and the budgets were quite lower to do Formula BMW in the States, and I found an American sponsor as well. So it was kind of, I remember sitting at home with my parents, and we were like, okay, do we do it or not? Because I was still in school, and it was a big thing to do, because you had to, it was kind of stop school and go to America and live there. And for me, it was, no brainer. I wanted to go racing, and I knew it was, the only chance my racing career would continue. So I convinced them, and we flew to the States. And I think it was, I think in March or in April, we did a test. And then I just stayed there, and they flew back. So yeah, that was kind of how my American adventure started.
How old were you at that time?
I was 17 years old.
Young.
Yeah, but it's funny. Like, for sure, I was young and all that. But I think I've been really lucky to know that what I wanted to do in my life. I wanted to race cars. I wanted to be, to go to Formula One and all that. But so it didn't. I didn't really think about, going to America or how crazy, I just knew I could race a car there. And yeah, it was a great experience for sure. It's tough when you live away from your friends and family, but, I was racing a car, so it didn't really matter in that sense.
Were you always well adjusted to traveling around? Like, were you able to kind of keep up with that hustle of traveling the world? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I liked, so being my parents, we traveled a lot quite anyways, in general. And but for sure, I think going to the States, it's not right, it's not an hour away or something like that. But at the time it didn't really faze me, that I was so far away from them. I was racing, so it really didn't matter, to be honest. Yeah.
What about when you made that step to become a professional? When it went from, this is what I want to do, this is the goal for my career. At what point did you go from, yep, I want to be a race car driver, to, yep, I am a race car driver?
Well, I think, this Formula BMW phase and going to America, because I did stop school and all that, it was that was a big step in a sense. It was kind of make it or break it as well. I knew, I had to be competitive. If not, I would go back to Switzerland and just, go back to school and stuff like that. So there, I think I started realizing, I need to be really competitive. I need to try to win races, need to fight for the championship. So that was one thing. But for sure, I think, when I would say when I got to IndyCar, that's really when, I realized, okay, this is kind of my job now. I think the first year was still kind of fun, but then you realize, okay, this is your job, and you've kind of achieved that. And I think that was quite special. And that's, all I was doing, was racing. So that was the step, I would say.
And so is racing something you've always done? Has there ever been anything else career-wise that you've done, or anything that you wanted to do that you wished you did?
No, actually, no. I think, if you get the chance to do something like racing, you really need to be in the moment to be successful. And I think it's hard when you try to do 100 things next to it. So no, I was always, I was lucky that my career always kind of went forward. Every year there was something new coming in, and I was racing something. So I think the last few years it's a bit more. I have a little bit more time because I don't have full programs, but at the time, no, it was always, every year there was a new season, and I was just preparing for that one.
So you mentioned IndyCar, 2010, your first IndyCar season. How did that come about?
So it came about. I did 3 years of Atlantics, and actually the third, I did the first 2 years. Well, okay, I had one win in Long Beach, which was quite cool. But then my season was really a bit, up and down. It was kind of good, sometimes bad, and stuff like that. But the third season in Atlantics, I was with a really good team. I had a really good engineer, and there I really, felt like I did the biggest step. We went out to the first race, and I think we finished 5th. And I really worked a lot on myself. Mentally, I was really crap at qualifying, for example. And I really worked hard on that, and went to the second race, and we qualified on pole with like half a second advantage. So in that year, really, this year, really I grew a lot, and became really, also secure in my abilities. I was like, okay, I know I can win races, and I can be competitive. And then I did almost win that championship, actually. And through that, we had a sponsor at the time, Stargate Worlds, that was sponsoring me in Atlantics. They kind of said, okay, we have the budget to actually go into IndyCar. And it was, it's kind of funny because I got into IndyCar, and then, for me, it was still kind of like, okay, it's a new season, it's a new car, it's a big car. But it was more year 2, or actually when I got to the Indy 500 in that year, where I realized, okay, holy shit, like this is the big league now. It's you in here, you can be, you can have a career here, and it was quite cool. I think Brazil was the first race, and I was leading laps, and so I went in, and I was pretty competitive sometimes, and it was just, it was amazing, to be in Indy cars, for sure.
You touched on having to do some work on the mental side of things. A lot of people probably don't even realize that, you got to be fit to drive a race car, you got to have the skill and the talent, but then the mental side of things, when you're all on that same level of skill, really, like everyone at that kind of top level is all can relatively do the same thing. Do you think it's the mental that then, comes into it above that, and how you can handle that pressure?
Yeah, I think mentally, that's the biggest strength a driver can have, because at the end of the day, I think we all kind of fast, and and okay, for sure, some people are a little bit better in setting up a car and things like that, or understand a bit more that side. But on the mental side, for me, I was always kind of fast, but in qualifying, I just couldn't put it together. It was, there was some corners that was good, and then I just couldn't put it together in the lap. And then just working mentally on it, and focusing on that, it made a huge change. Then I was, I think we had, I don't know, 4 or 5 poles that year. So it was just a really big step just in working on myself and, being able to be in the moment. So I think the mental side is really important, but it's also hard. It's kind of hard to, like, I'm not really somebody who let's say meditates a lot. Like I understand it a bit, but sometimes I also don't understand, and it's really a strange feeling, to kind of find a path that is always successful. So you always need to work around it and try to find new things. So it's sometimes, like my qualifying thing, it was working well, and all of a sudden it wasn't working anymore, and you don't really know why, because you're not really changing anything. But it's just a kind of a process that you have to go through and keep trying to improve and try to try different things, I would say.
And can you take us back to your first Indy 500? What was it like suddenly going into such a massive, prestigious event like that?
Yeah, well, it was funny because, I was still young, how old was I? I was 20. And, I'd heard of the Indy 500 and for sure, big race. But I never, at the time, I really didn't realize how big it is. I just went in, okay, it's another race in the calendar, even though I knew it was, had a lot of history and all that. But actually, then the amount of people there, that was the first thing, it was crazy. Like the whole month, there's just so many people. Actually, that was the time I had to shorten my signature, because it was much longer before. And, I realized, okay, you have to sign so many things, you have to shorten it. And then as the month went on, the more I realized, okay, man, this is like really crazy. This is a really big deal. And you're practicing. The qualifying is super nerve-wracking. I think qualifying at the Indy 500, I think it's the hardest thing I'd ever had to do in a race car. And just going through these motions to maybe not qualify. It's pretty crazy. And then you go out on race day, and there's just so many people, and it's amazing. And I think the more I did it, the more I realized how important this race is. It's something for me that grew more, as the time went on. Then in 2010, when I went there the first time, I didn't gasp it as well. Maybe I was still young as well. I think when you're younger, you don't really, realize these things sometimes. You're just going with the flow and stuff like that. And the older you get, you're like, oh wow, it's pretty crazy. And even now, when I get the chance to do the 500, I think I put even more pressure on me, because you just like, wow, this is that's one race you want to win.
One thing that I've noticed with the Indy 500 as well, it seems to be an event where there's quite a fair bit of female involvement. Like there's been some female drivers in it over the years that have done quite well. Was it something that you ever noticed, that you were maybe a little bit outnumbered, or how did you kind of feel about that? Did you feel any pressure at all, being one of the only females on the grid?
Not really. I think when I came to IndyCar, Danica was racing already a few years, and for me, I never thought I was the odd one. You know what I mean? Like I was a race car driver, so for me it was I didn't really think about those things. And you had Danica racing already. She had won a race in 2008, so she was kind of the top, like she had won a race and all that. And we were racing there and racing against her. It was quite cool. So and there was, I think, I don't know which year it was, but I think we were like 4 or 5 girls in the 500. So I think in that sense, IndyCar has always been all the major series, the one that had the most females, I would say.
Yeah, that's really cool to have 4 or 5, females on one grid is massive. You can put a couple of categories together these days and not even make, 4 or 5 girls. So that's really special. What about the rest of your time in IndyCar? What sort of highlights do you remember from that time?
Oh, well, I think there's a few. I think when I won Rookie of the Year at the Indy 500 in 2010, that's quite cool. When I look at the list of names, and you have your name on it, it's pretty amazing. And then for sure, I think my last year in 2013 was a really good year. We I think we finished 13th in the championship. We had a podium. We finished second. We were consistently top 10, top 5. It was I think it was a really strong year, and it was I think if you look at it, I was in front of a lot of people who are now have won championships and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that year for sure.
And then in 2014, the opportunity came up for you to join I don't know if I'm saying this right, but the Sauber F1 team as an affiliated driver. And although it didn't quite work out, what was it like being a part of an F1 team with a potential career in Formula One on the horizon?
Yeah, for me, it was, since I was little, Formula One was really always my goal. Even at the time when I was in IndyCar, I was always, I want to get Formula One because I was young and all that. And I got to test the car, and the test went really well and stuff like that. And then, unfortunately, it kind of fell apart because of a lot of things that were out of my control. At the time, Sauber had a lot of money problems, and they needed quite a lot of budgets and stuff like that. So it was, something that I really couldn't, come up with. So so it was really, actually, it was really cool. I got to drive an F1 car, so that's really positive, and I was quite fast in it, so that was really cool as well. And but for sure, I think mentally and all that, having something, you're so close to something that you've kind of worked for your whole life, and then it's really out of your control and you're not really achieving it. It was quite a tough thing, because then all of a sudden I sat here and I had nothing. I didn't have an IndyCar ride. It was kind of like, okay, what am I doing now? And it was that was difficult. I would say that was one of the most difficult things that happened in my career, in the sense because it was out of my control. And I would say there's two things that were really hard in my car. It was my crash in 2011, but yeah, that was kind of hard, because I think you work for that thing all your life. You have this goal, and all of a sudden, you just can't reach it, and you feel a little bit lost, to be honest, because you're like, okay, what now? Like, where are we going? Where's the road continuing now?
Yeah, it's so tough, isn't it? That whole Formula One world. And like, I can't even imagine how surreal that would have been for you, though. Can you kind of take us through what it was like when you first stepped into a Formula One car?
It was actually, where was it? It was in Fiorano, so it was already quite cool because it was like on the Ferrari track, and I don't know, I just felt really prepared. I don't know, I came from IndyCar. I felt really prepared for it. I knew this was kind of my shot, in the sense of prepared well. And when I got in the car, the engine went on. It was really loud. It was still the, I think it was a V8, V10. Like, it was really loud, and I just went off. And what I remembered was actually the braking. It was so crazy. Even coming from an Indy car where you have a lot of downforce, and it's a heavy car to drive. Physically, it's really demanding. But I got to turn one and hit the brake, and it was just like, it really stopped instantly, and that was really, really impressive. And I trained my neck really hard. Even coming out of racing, I was just like, it was such a bigger step for my neck. Like, I think by midday, I couldn't really hold my head up. It was really crazy. But it's just really cool because the car was just perfect, in the sense, I don't think I've ever driven anything like it, where all the things are just perfect. How it brakes, how it accelerates, how it corners and stuff like that. It was quite cool. And I think the biggest thing was just, to kind of trust the car, to go faster, because it can take it. So that was kind of the biggest challenge, actually, those test days, just to trust the machinery to, okay, you keep going quicker, and sticks to it. So it's that was in your brain, it was kind of like, okay, you just have to trust it and commit to it.
You mentioned just before about your crash being, one of the hardest things you've had to overcome in your career so far. You're only 22 when that happened, and that was it's pretty massive. How did that mentally affect you? And like, yeah, crazy thing to happen at such a young age, and also in America, away from your family. And yeah, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, it was hard because I was, it was the suspension broke, so it wasn't really a mistake I did, and I think I was going like 360k an hour, and yeah, caught on fire, landed upside down, and I couldn't really get out of the car, so it was. I think it was, when actually the safety crew came and took me out. I actually told myself I'm done with racing. I don't want to get in the car again. So it really really spooked me, and I think as a driver it's dangerous, but you kind of you don't think about these things, and when that was the first time I really got hurt in a race car as well. I burned my hands really badly, and it was just it was yeah the first time I got hurt, so it was kind of difficult. And I remember I was being in the hospital, and I think it was on Thursday, and my parents were actually flying over, and I was in the hospital, and my parents came in, and my dad was, like, it's fine, if you want to stop, it's fine, and stuff like that. And my mom actually, she was always more the scared one, a little, not scared, but she was always like the more respectful one, I would say, with my racing. But she was the one that said, maybe you should try it again, And I think because she told me this, I was kind of like, oh, maybe she's right. Maybe I need to try it, and I need to see, if I go out there and, I'm really scared, and, then at least, I know it's fine, I can stop, I tried. Or if I go out there and still somehow, have a bit of a smile on my face, I need, it's fine. And then I know I need to push through it. And so, because she said that, I was like, okay, I'll get back in the car. And I went back in the car on Saturday, and so like a day and a half later, it was pretty intense, going there. And qualifying was also really on the limit, and I qualified the car. But I got out of the car, and I still had a little smile on my face. So I told myself, okay, you need to just push through. It's not going to be easy, but just keep at it, and it will be fine. So I'm glad I did it. But for sure, I think it's pretty intense, especially at Indy, because you're going so fast. You're so on the edge on an oval. It's not like on a road course where you're braking and stuff like that. You really have to trust the car and just kind of let it fly. And it's really intense. It was That month was really really intense, I would say. Yeah.
And when something like that happens, how do you kind of not let it get to you? Even now, is it something that's still always in the back of your mind?
Well, I think as time, I think the human being forgets as well, a bit, and you just kind of, get on with it. But for sure, I think there was sometimes, I think especially that year, I would go back on an oval, and it was really tough. It was just not comfortable, because I had, what happened to me was something that broke. So it was just so out of your control. You're just a passenger. You can't, it's nothing that you felt before or anything like that. So what actually was really hard for me was just finding the trust, in the equipment, in the car, that it was going to be fine. And that took just a little bit. And, and as time goes on, to be honest, I had more positives after than negatives. So you just go with the flow, and you get back into it. But for sure, I think sometimes, yeah, if I think if you have a crash, it's inevitably, if you're racing, that you're going to have a crash again. But then you just need to really work on it, and at the end of the day, you always need to listen to yourself, how you feel, and how you how you are, and I think in these sports, if you start being scared, maybe you should stop. That's also maybe a sign. But this hasn't happened to me yet. So yeah, so at the moment we keep pushing through. But for sure, they're not easy moments, but they make you grow quite a lot, I would say.
Now, from IndyCar, then the F1 Association, next was Formula E. Now, Formula E is relatively new in the world of motorsport. It's not really a thing here in Australia. They don't come here. We don't really see much of it. Talk to me about that phase Obviously, it's a couple of years after your crash. You've done a few more seasons of IndyCar. You end up driving with Andretti Autosport, which is a massive name in motorsport. How did that, what was that whole phase like?
Yeah, it was interesting because it was, so I had this Formula One thing kind of fall apart at the end of, in the middle of 14, I would say. And then I really tried hard to get back into IndyCar, actually. But I didn't really have a sponsor anymore. And it was, it was a bit of a mess. So I did find some money, actually. I kind of went and people I knew, and I was like, look, like maybe we can go and do the first race and the 500, and maybe this will kickstart things again, and then we'll be fine. And I managed to find that money, and we went to St. Pete, and it was not too bad. It was okay. And then I had one person help me to go to the second race, which was I think it was in New Orleans, and we finished fourth. So at the time, we had two races in. We were like sixth in the or fourth in the championship, so it looked pretty good. But at the end of the day, there wasn't any big sponsors, that was gonna continue in the IndyCar season. And I had signed for the 500 as well with Andretti. So I did all these three races, and luckily for me, they started Formula E the year in that year or the year before, and they offered me this seat, actually. And I was, to be honest, in the beginning I was pretty skeptical because I grew up never thinking that I would be racing in an electric car or something like that. It was just really strange. I think a lot of us in the paddock were like, okay, what is this? And in the beginning, the cars were also, they were not thought through as an electric car. So it was more of a race car with an electric motor. So it was difficult car to drive. It was really strange because it had no noise, and we had a lot of issues with the powertrain as well, because we were in season 2 and we're still using a powertrain from season 1. So we had some good races, but the season was a bit average, let's say. It was a first step into it. I like the category. I kind of like the the innovation of it, because you would see as well through the years how better the cars became, and the teams as we learned. So in the sense, even now being involved still with it, I think it's quite cool to see how quickly things are evolving. And I think as a racing driver, I think it's pretty special to be involved in this, because there's so much change happening within years with the electric power and all that. So I think it's pretty fascinating. Well, let's say, I'm with Porsche now, and I'm involved in the project, and what I see, what they're doing, you see the cars they're producing, and all that. I think it's really cool to see, and to be honest, the new car as well is really fast. It goes really quick down the straightaway. It's the technology behind it is also, it's really special. It's definitely different than what I grew up with, because how you're braking and stuff like that is different, and all these things. But I think for sure, there's you have Formula One. I think Formula One will always be Formula One, but I think that Formula E has a huge potential now, and now that the cars are becoming faster and bigger and all that, going to bigger racetracks and stuff like that, the racing is really cool. It's quite different. There's a lot of strategy into it and stuff like that. I think I think it's a good series, and I think it's fun to watch. I think the cars are really fun to drive as well. So I think it's definitely the future in that sense. And from the outside, maybe, because it is so new, and I think especially for example, my generation, I grew up with like engines, that make sound and stuff like that. So for me as well, still it's different. But I think the newer generation is already way more accustomed to something like that. So for them, maybe, it's just normal to be with an electric car, and they would think, oh, why is that, the F1 car being so loud and stuff. For them, maybe it doesn't make sense. So I think it's going to be quite interesting in the next like 10 years, how that shift is going to happen, and I think the kids nowadays, are way more, with computers, with all these stuff, they're just way more natural with this kind of stuff. And I think, an electric car is also way more natural for them.
Now, 2015 was a big year for you. Supercars came into your world. We both work in supercars currently now. It's our jam. We love it. Grew up watching the sport similar way to, over in Europe, you'd grow up watching formula categories. That's our supercars for us. And you come and joined us in 2015 for a wildcard race at Bathurst. Now, Bathurst is a pretty crazy place. I was there like 2 weeks ago for the 6 hour. It's a lot of fun, but talk to me about that opportunity that come into, be the main driver, then have Renee Gracie as your co-driver. How'd that all come about? You're also doing a couple of IndyCar races as well in 2015. So big year.
Yeah, it was a big year. It was doing Formula E, doing IndyCar, and then I got this call to come and do, Bathurst. And to be honest, when I got the call, I was like, yes, I'm doing it, because for me it was that was going to be my only chance I get to race there. I think if you ask any racing driver, anyone wants to race there. I think the track is it's like amazing. I think, I played it on video games, I watched a lot of videos of it and stuff like that. So when I got the call, if I wanted to do this wild card, it was a no-brainer for me to do it. I was just like, yeah, because this is going to be my shot at going to Bathurst, and then driving a supercar as well. Even here in Europe, if you're in the paddock, and you say, I raced in V8s and stuff like that, it's just like, oh, that's really cool. A lot of people are jealous. So yeah, I jumped at the opportunity to do it for sure.
And so yourself and Renee, you were the first female pairing since they're called the Castrol Cougars, and that was Melinda Price and Karen Brew in the late 90s. So I guess coming from Europe and, like you said, growing up, there was probably a bit more female involvement, whereas in Australia, it just wasn't really a thing. How did that feel? Did it feel kind of different coming into it, or did you just kind of carry the same attitude?
Yeah, no, it didn't feel different. The only difference was really that it was the first time that I was teaming up with another girl. I'd never done that before, so that was the first time I did that, and it was actually, yeah, it was quite fun. I think it was a fun thing to do, but for sure that was, and also sharing the car. I never shared a car before, so that was more the things that were different, but not, I don't think I thought about, going in with Renee, oh, we're going to be against, the guys, like this thought, really, it's only kind of now that I'm like sometimes thinking, oh, maybe it was a bit more difficult. But at the time, I don't know, you're a racing driver. And for me, my attitude was always, I need to try to be fast. And, if I'm fast, I'll be accepted from the guys and stuff like that. So to me, it never really crossed my mind, this, this stuff. No, not at all.
So we obviously left a rather good impression on you, because you came back and become a full-time driver in the Supercars Championship with Nissan Motorsport, Kelly Racing. What was that phase like? You impressed someone at the Bathurst 1000 in the wildcard enough to come back and do it full-time. Can you talk to me about those years? I mean, I was in the paddock, 2017 was my first year getting around the paddock and doing like actual work stuff and, passing by, and it's just, it's really cool. It's aspirational, and it was really cool to see your name, and you were the first full-time supercars driver for a long time who was a female. So yeah, it was a really cool time for the sport. And what was that like from your perspective?
Yeah, it was actually, it was really, I think thanks to Harvey Norman, I think, she, kind of really believed in me, and I was really lucky that, at the time, in the series as well, there was some interest in me and putting this deal together. And, I think having Harvey Norman on board, I think, was also super special because I think they do so much in Australia for female athletes, and to have them kind of support this was really cool. And for me, it was I don't know, it was at the time it was really a really good opportunity, and I really enjoyed the wild cards that I had done. I really enjoyed the cars as well. I really liked the racing. The racing is really pure and supercars, and for me as a driver, it was something that I really wanted to do. And for sure, I think the only thing is that Australia is really far away from home. That was kind of the thing that was okay. It's not like America where you can just take one short flight home or something like that. So it was a big commitment, but yeah, I really, the team was great. They really welcomed me, with open arms, and for sure, I think the first 2 years, I think coming from Europe, I haven't really raced close cars and all that. It was it took a little bit of time, just to kind of understand how to drive the cars, how to drive them faster. Also, maybe get the car more to how I would drive it. That was a bit of a process because, most of the people or the drivers, just grew up driving these type of cars. So, if you come from an open wheel, you have a little bit of a different style. So it just took a little bit of time to get the car a little bit more to how I wanted. And I think we had some good speed, especially in the third season. It was quite good. And yeah, I think at the time was, definitely a bit sad that it didn't really continue in the sense, just opportunity wise. But I really enjoyed it. It was really three years of my racing career that that I will always remember. And it'd be really cool to come back, and do a wild card or something like that. I think it'd be really fun. I would really enjoy it.
So yeah, just on that, with the opportunity coming back to Australia, would you come back maybe just for like, let's say, a one-off wild card? Would you come back full time?
Well, I don't, right now I think I'm in a pretty good position at Porsche, with my involvement in the Formula E program. So that's kind of my priority now. And yeah, I don't know, a wild card or, as a co-driver, I think I would definitely, I think if this opportunity would come up, I think it's something I definitely would consider.
Yeah, that's really cool. Speaking of your Porsche deal, you've done some awesome things, but look, you're a Porsche official driver now. You got to tell us, do you get a really cool car, like a road car to drive?
Yes, I do. So yeah, I think it's definitely one of the perks, driving for Porsche. They're such, I think in racing, they're such a special brand, and for me to kind of join them, I think like you said, I've raced so many things in my career, but to kind of come part of their Formula E team and all that, it's quite cool. And yeah, definitely the cars you get is quite fun as well. Yeah, let's say it's gonna be hard to drive anything else now. That's the thing.
And yeah, just on that, just in everything you've raced, what has probably been your favorite?
Well, this, I think pure, like car wise and stuff, like, for sure, an F1 car you can't beat, just how it feels, how fast it is, stuff like that. But I am an open wheel kid, so I definitely would say Indy cars, I think where, I can have the most success, I had the most success as well, is definitely something that really suits me. But yeah, from the racing point of view and the formats, I think supercars, especially at Bathurst, is just amazing. I think you can't beat that. So I don't know, it's kind of hard to say, just that, because to be honest, I've been so lucky to race in so many cool categories. It's that's the thing. It's everything has their special thing, and yeah, so in that sense, I've been lucky. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly what my favorite is, let's say.
And my next question was going to be your favorite track to race at, and we know it's Bathurst, so it's okay.
No, it actually is. It's funny
You
because
don't have to say that just because we're
no,
Aussies.
no, it is true. To be honest, I think it's the only track, even if you're having the worst race, and nothing is going well, you still enjoy driving around it. Like, to be honest, that's how it is, because it's just really fun to drive around. Like, I love it. I think it's the best place in the world, to be honest. And it is my answer, not just because of you guys. I promise. It's always my answer. Yeah.
Speaking about that, we know our listeners love Bathurst. What was your first Bathurst experience like? Like, you land into Sydney. Did you road trip up, or did you do the flight to Sydney and drive out?
I flew into Sydney. No. Actually, the first year on the wild card, yeah, my dad came to Melbourne. And then I was like, you know what? Why don't we road trip from Melbourne all the way?
That's the official way you have to do your first time.
Exactly. But the thing is, literally, so my dad landed and we spent like 2 days, I think, in Melbourne. And then he's like, yeah, let's do the road trip. I'm like, okay, we'll do it. And I think I ended up driving the whole way because he was so jet lagged. So he was always like sleeping next to me. And I don't think he saw that much of it. But no, it was, so that's what we did. It was cool. So we did that and we drove to the race, and then and we did that the first year. And I think the second year I had a friend come with me, and we did the similar thing. So it was it was cool, to be honest. Especially if you do a wild card, it's always special because you spend a bit of time there, and you get to kind of really take your time because you don't have the pressure of any other races before or after, so it's kind of a cool few weeks actually when I did it. Yeah.
What was so when you first arrived, did you do a walk of the track first, or did you do a hire car lap of the track first, or what was the first, like, oh my God, this thing is so steep, and oh my God, this thing is so, like, on the way down? You walk down it and you almost fall over. Like, it's so loose.
Exactly. So we walked it, and so we were with the team. I walked it. My dad came along as well, and we were walking the track, and it was just, I think it's just cool because it's so big, and I don't know, it's just super special, and even the first year I drove it, you're kind of okay, but you don't really get the flow of things. It takes a little bit of time. Like the second year was so much better because it was just more flowy how everything went. But back to that track walk, I remember we were walking the track and I was like, oh, this is cool. And my dad was like so pumped as well. He was like, oh, this is really cool. And you know what he really enjoyed is that, everywhere we stopped, there was somebody who handed him a beer. So he really enjoyed that aspect of doing the track walk with us, and he was like, that's the best track walk I've ever done. And so it was quite funny. So he really loved the Aussie way. Yeah.
That is the just quintessential Bathurst experience, like doing a track walk when all the teams do it. There's campers everywhere.
Exactly.
Like it's like Campers Fest. But you said that the Indy 500 was one of the craziest things you've ever done. How does our Bathurst 1000 rank in terms of craziness? Because for us, it's pretty hectic.
It is pretty crazy. So actually, well, let's say, what is at the Indy, what is really strange or weird is that you're there like for like 2 weeks, and you're practicing and you're driving, and there isn't that many people and all that, and then you qualify the car, okay, cool, and then you have a week of nothing, and then you go racing on that, so and you walk out and you in the car, and the whole perspective changes because there's so many people all of a sudden, so the track looks way narrower, and that stuff. So that's kind of what is really, like just kind of a bit like, oh, okay, this is way strange because it looks so different. But what I thought that was really cool at Bathurst is that, when you did the parade lap, you like all the they're really into it. And I think that's what, like in Australia, was really cool, is that everyone loves supercars. You walk down through, everyone is involved. That's really something special. And actually, my dad, and my mom, they went up on the mountain because they were like, okay, we're going to check it out. We're going to get the whole thing. And they came back, with pictures of a whole pig roasting and, the cans. Like, it was just like, it was really cool. So I think you Aussies know how to, be at the race and enjoy it. And I think in that sense, I think you win that, I would say, yes.
Canpole Corner is like an institution at the top
It's
of
amazing.
Bathurst. It's so cool.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's like my parents, I remember them, and they were like, oh my God, you need to see this, you need to see this. And I was like, oh, this is like really fun. Because like for me, it's, when you're at the race, like you kind of want to enjoy, but you have the, pressure in the sense that, you need to be with the team and stuff like that. But it was quite fun when they came back, and came back down. They were like, oh, this is like the craziest thing I've ever seen and all that. So it was really funny, yeah.
Would you say it was quite a culture shock coming to Australia and just seeing how loose and wild the fans are at Bathurst?
Not, I think not, it wasn't a shock or anything. I think it was just cool, because I think that's how racing should be. I think nowadays, in Europe especially, it's just, nobody really can come to the path, it's just, and I was used a little bit in America where it's also a little bit more open, and all that. But, I think in Australia, they, you guys really live it as well. You like your sports is just really, you're really into it, you really live it. And even with this Ford and Holden, I think that was amazing to see, just because families have been Holden family or families have been, like, you don't really get that nowadays. And I think that was really special to experience, to be honest. And I think it's something when people ask me and be like, God, it's just really cool how they're just so into it.
And because you nearly, done everything there is to do in motorsport, you thought you'd just now go and start to bobsled. So talk to us about that, because it looks so cool. And I grew up watching Cool Runnings, so that's my extent of bobsledding. That's all I've got.
Well, that was my inspiration.
Such a good movie. Kiss my egg.
There you go. That actually, it's funny. For years, I always, when I watch the Olympics, I'm always like, man, it's like so cool, the Olympics, right? And every time I'm like so inspired by the athletes and all that, and I'm a race car driver. I'm like, wow, I'm not gonna go to the Olympics in a race car. So maybe 10 years ago, I was kind of like, man, how could I get to the Olympics? That was kind of my thought. And I was like, okay, how can I get there? So I kind of looked at the sports, and I don't know, Summer Olympics, that's going to be really hard because you need to start really young. And then, if you're skiing, that's also something you need to start really young. And then I was like, you know what, like with my driving, maybe I can figure out how to drive a sled. I was like, maybe that's the closest thing that maybe can get me there. And then, so that was always in my head, like it was always kind of there. And then 2 years ago, I was like, oh, if I really want to try this, like I need to try it now, because after, I'll be too old and, it's just not going to happen. So I was like, you know what, you're going to do it. I'm going to do it. Like, I really want to go to the Olympics. So then, I just kind of started calling people. And luckily, I knew some people who maybe were involved. And 2 winters ago, I had my first run down the icy hill. And it was quite an experience because, they kind of explain to you what to do in those corners. And all of a sudden, you sitting in this sled, and they just let you go, and you just committed. It's not like a car where you just drive out. Maybe you can brake, see how it is, and you just committed to that thing. So it was pretty intense, but I really enjoyed it. And so that's why I started it, because I want to go to the Olympics. So that's the goal, and hopefully we achieve that in 26. So there's a bit of work, but I think it's achievable. So we'll put a lot of effort into it to do that.
It's so cool. And I guess for you, what does the next year look like with your sledding and your motorsport?
So actually this year it's actually a bit of a strange year, to be honest. I'm involved with the whole Formula E program. I'm doing all their support with Porsche, and there's actually to be honest, unfortunately, not too much racing this year, because I think there's going to be some really cool thing happening next year. So there's just a lot of preparation for a few things that are coming. And on the one side, it's maybe good for my bobsled career at the moment, so I can spend some time running and getting better at starting. So that's what the year looks like. So it's a little bit of a mix of things this year.
As always, it's a Girls on the Grid tradition for our final question to be, what is your advice for women, female, girls, any age who want to either race or get into motorsport? Maybe for you, it's more about like, how can we get more women on the grid? What's your advice to get more women behind the wheel of a race car?
Yeah, well, I think, the biggest advice, I think if you, a little girl or what, I think the first thing is, if you want to do something, not be afraid to talk about what you want to do. For me personally, I knew I wanted to be a race car driver. If you want to be a mechanic, an engineer, just don't be afraid to speak about it. That's what you want to do. I think that's a big thing. And I think, the traditional, like, believe in yourself for sure. I think that's important. But I think the most important is really, if you really want to do something and try something, that you need to speak to people about it, and that's really the way you're going to get there, because you always need people to guide you a little bit and help you achieve those things. And if you don't speak of what you really want, and do in your life, or what you aspire to, that gets a little bit harder. So I think that would be the biggest advice that I would say. And to get more girls, that's what I mean. I think don't be afraid. If you want to change a wheel of a supercar or an Indy car, don't think that it's not something for you. If you really want to do that, you should go for it.
So to wrap this up nicely, in our second ever episode of this podcast, the guest Leanne Ferrier said that if you see it, you can then be it. So Simona, thank you, because you are being that inspiration to so many women all around the world. And it's just an honor to have had you on here for episode 50 of the Girls on the Grid podcast. So thank you for your time, and we hope to see you back down under real soon.
Thank you.